Oh no, we lost the thing.
Did I just break it?
No, I didn't just break it. Yes, we're carving a pumpkin, people. It is all pumpkin time. Ugh. Our stem broke.
Our stem
What are we
broke.
gonna do?
We have a disaster.
Oh, sorry, people. We have a broken pumpkin
We need
situation.
to glue it back on.
I don't think you can. Maybe we can glue it back on. Does anybody have any advice about gluing pumpkins?
Listen, we don't need your help.
And we have a cat who's invading our
don't
pumpkin.
want your
This is
help.
like the Halloween thing where cats like
We have a black cat.
transmogrify and become like witches something. We'll see. Hey, Chance,
He's
how are you?
as helpful as Luke.
He is very unhelpful and also the sweetest and kindest cat ever.
And he smells like
He's like a stray. I mean, just literally imagine having a stray cat coming out of prison that is like the kindest, sweetest thing ever, but may also be like the bastion of evil. We're not really sure. And we'll definitely just like walk on you and be like, yep, you're mine now. Yeah, okay.
it. Right.
But again, we don't know if we can glue this back on, so we're going to have to see if this works. But yeah, we'll see. But I have to say, this is a lot better. Now, we never managed to carve a pumpkin in prison, but when I was in the mental health pod, or the mental health treatment program, the peer support program, and I was a mentor, I managed to get a garden started. And that was one of the things that I was like most excited about. And we grew pumpkins because we had this big open patch, but they didn't want to give us a bunch of good soil, and they would just kind of spread out. So we had pumpkins, and we were going to try to do a pumpkin carving thing, but we had a guy make like a pumpkin knife out of plexiglass, and they freaked out, and like that shut down the pumpkin carving. So, yeah. What age did I start balding? I don't know. Early 20s, mid 20s. I feel like we're getting to the meat of this criminal justice issue. Yeah, no, and I feel better than some guys. We had one guy in there, dude, he was like 19. He was like bald and had like gray in his hair, and we were like, man, you had a hard life. So I felt really lucky. Well, yes, Chance, you can put your foot on my leg. No problem. So he's a really sweet cat. He's just an outdoor cat, so I probably now have rabies. But
You don't have rabies, you have fleas.
I have fleas. That's good to know. Yeah. Well, we'll try and do the flea treatment. I mean, know how to... Well, actually, no, we could just give him flea treatment, right? I don't know how to do this. We could probably find some way to give him flea treatment, and then we could solve that. Friendly travel advisor? Hey, I want a friendly...
Yeah.
Oh, I feel like this is a trick. I did go to college, thankfully. I was one of the only people that I knew that was able to get a bachelor's degree while I was in prison because, it's not paid for by the state. Nothing is covered. So it had to be out of pocket, and it took 15 years, and it just took a long time, so... Somebody told you your hair was going at 20. That's rough. Well, welcome to the club. I'm just
There are
rocking
worse
it.
things in life.
Yeah. At some point, I'm going to have to do something about it, but for now, I'm just, like, rocking the... I like being able to have hair, because for so many years not being able to have it, it just means a lot. Yeah. And yeah, I'm definitely appreciative of being free, and every day. Yeah. My way of speaking is so interesting. I think I just speak really fast because my brain gets excited, and my mouth just kind of spits it out. What can people do to improve the prison system from the outside? I think there's a lot of... So there's kind of general advocacy work, which is talking about what's going on or talking about what we can do better or talking about the big problems we have. I think there is direct work that people can do. You can volunteer with an organization. You can volunteer to go in with a religious group. You can volunteer to teach literacy. You can volunteer to do a lot of things depending on the system. In my case, it's like really advocating for things like restorative justice, for programs that ask people to be accountable and also then ask them to change, and then give them the facilities and the programs and the treatment they need to change, which I think is the biggest thing. Do I miss any of the prison guards who would basically become like a friend? Not really. Probably the closest was when the last job that I had, I worked in medical, and we had one of the guards that worked medical with me, and he was just super friendly, and it wasn't even that we necessarily had like a lot in common personally, but he would just complain about the staff, or he would complain about, the prisoners. He would complain about whatever in the same kind of way that felt like coworkers, even though he was obviously not a coworker. But yeah, I mean, I remember the day that I got out, he wasn't on shift, so I didn't get to say goodbye to him. So I was kind of sad about that because I wanted to be able to be like, guess what, bro? Like, I'm going home. Have fun. Yes, I am from Virginia. State. I was in Virginia State for 19 years. Did we see the DC snipers in prison? So Malvo, the younger one, last I heard he was at Sussex. They had him in like long-term seg at Sussex. And he was back there, like kind of communicating with guys, like, writing books or sharing books back and forth or playing chess back and forth. I think he's an interesting case because he was so young and he was so obviously manipulated by this older person that I don't know, what the right thing to do is, or I don't know who he is now, but I think it's a difficult situation. It's not as simple as like some guy who just went out and did something crazy. if I could change one thing about the prison system, I would employ social workers and occupational therapists and psychologists, and I would ask them, how do we facilitate change in people, rather than saying, how do we punish people, and how do we lock them up, and how do we control them? Because what I found is that when you try to control somebody, it's like pressure in a tea kettle. The more you put in there, the more it's going to come out one way or the other. So you can like control somebody to behave in a certain circumstance, and they get out and they kind of run wild. Or I just think the idea of control and punishment is antithetical to actually seeking change. Would I be so successful without my awesome woman? Not even close. She has been like the landing pad and the guiding light, and there's so many things for me. And I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for this. Like I literally wouldn't have made a TikTok account. When she first told me, I was like, you're joking, right? Like, why would I get on TikTok? Who wants to hear this bunch of crap? But, you know, however many times later, somehow we're here. And it really is a lot to her. And it's, you know, the speaking engagements, the ability to go out, the nonprofit, like, all this stuff has come through my relationship with her and her stance and her encouragement. So I feel really fortunate. Does anyone have any cats in the cell? No. But when I was first at Powhatan, I was at Powhatan Receiving, and they had cats who used to run between the main prison and the receiving prison, and they were just, like, set. Like, they did their thing. There was a guy who used to walk the yard, and everybody knew him as a guy who made knives, but he was also the guy who, like, loved the cats, and the cat loves him, so he'd be walking the yard, and people would just come up and be like, it was just a crazy thing. But then at Nottoway, when I was over in the wood shop, they had cats who used to stay behind the building where all, like, the steam stuff was, so it would be warm, and they would come over and sometimes take food out of your hands. At Buckingham, we really didn't have cats, or not consistently. Sometimes they would run to the kitchen, but it was a lot more rare to see. Yeah.
All right, I gotta go get a pan.
Scandinavian countries have a much better prison system. I agree, and I hear a lot of complaints and a lot of things about how different our cultures are, but I think fundamentally if we invest in people and we treat them like people, we hold them accountable and we encourage them to be the best version of themselves, I'm not saying we're going to fix everybody, I'm not saying we're going to change the world, but I think we would have a much higher success rate. But what it requires is actually investing in people, investing time and energy and money, and in this country we have this like, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours kind of mindset. We're like, why would we help somebody else? Like, I didn't get that help. It's like, okay, great. Like, you didn't get special education help either, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't help somebody who needs it. Like, there's a really simple way of saying, hey, we're going to do what we can to provide the needs that are the best for society. It's not just about the person. This isn't just rewarding this person. This is bringing somebody back into society who will pay taxes and will be a responsible, productive community member and will give back in the ways that other people can give. What I found is pretty consistently, the people who are most strongly opposed to helping anybody else are the ones that don't do anything to help anybody else. They're not volunteering, they're not working in organizations, they're not giving their time, they're not giving money, because what they're really saying is, I want to keep all my stuff and I don't want anybody to have it, which doesn't even necessarily make them bad people, it just means they're afraid. And I think the goal is to break through that fear and say, hey, this isn't about somebody taking something from you. As a matter of fact, if there's a way to help, we want to help you too, and changing the narrative, because that fear just defines people's lives, and it's really unfortunate. Bye, kitty cat! Thank you so much. Roasted pumpkin seeds? Are we roasting pumpkin seeds?
I think we are.
And we're apparently going to super glue this back on, though I'm not sure how. Yeah. The latest season on Hulu, World's Toughest Prison. So people watch like 60 Days In and World's Toughest Prison, and I can't do it. It's like, that's a throwback for me that I just really do not enjoy. So I tend to try to just stay away. Like, there's a one, I think it's on Hulu, it's the, you know what, the one they're talking about, the guy who got out of prison during the pandemic? It's supposed to be really funny, and it's an actor that I like, but I still haven't been able to watch it. It's still just, like, kind of triggering to me, so I gotta try to figure that out. From Pakistan. Hello from Pakistan. Yes, I've heard from Larry Lawton. I actually talked to his son, who is the, like, business manager, talked and asked if he was ever coming out this way in the RV, and we could hook up. He does, like, a mentoring program for youth. I mean, he's getting out and doing what I think the ideal is. We don't run away from our experience. We don't bury it. We don't hide it. We use our experience to help other people, and it looks like that's what he's doing. And I just think that's a really positive thing. So I am from Charlottesville, Virginia. We have people from the UK, from Pakistan, from Australia. She's doing all the work. Yeah.
He's doing all the talking.
I'm good at the talking. She's good at the working. That's unfortunately the way this works.
That is not all true.
Wait,
I
you gotta
can
remember.
talk too.
She was a TV reporter, like news anchor. Like, this is Courteney Stewart with the CBS 19 Evening News, and I would like to.
I didn't have a good TV voice though.
She has, you know what she has? She has like a tell you a secret voice. Like, hey, you want to hear something? Like, she has that. So when she was on the news, I was always like, yeah, I want to know. Like, what's the secret? So it was kind of different. Get a hand mixer for the pumpkin innards. Okay. What are my thoughts on pen pal programs like Write a Prisoner? So I had some really amazing friendships and relationships out of Write a Prisoner. I got some really positive things out of it. There are people that I still talk to today. So I think it can be a really positive thing. I think that both parties need to be realistic. I had people that were unwell that contacted me from the outside, and I've seen people contact people on the inside who were like manipulative or unwell in their own way. So it was a balance of finding really firm boundaries, figuring out what that is, and then if you can, developing relationships and friendships. And it's really neat. Like, we were actually hoping to meet with Iris, and it didn't work out, but hopefully some of the people that I've met, I'll actually be able to connect with and will be able to connect with, which I'm excited about. You're from Stanton? We were in Stanton.
I love Stanton.
Yeah.
So adorable.
So
downtown.
her dream is she wants us to move there when so we have like a Zillow alert, so every time a cute house in Stanton comes up, so I'll just be like going through my day and she'll be like sending me houses in Stanton, and like I don't know, we can't afford to buy another house or anything, but it would be really nice because it is such a neat town. And we went there for the premiere of a documentary at this art space downtown that was just absolutely amazing. Like it blew my mind. So do I think of Greg, the serial killer cellmate, when Courtney's carving the pumpkin? No, and Greg never was like overtly threatening to me. Like I was uncomfortable with some of the things he said in relationship to other things, but never did I feel like personally like he was a threat. Like I was kind of freaked out when I found out, but I mean, that's a weird thing. I was around guys who had like heinous. I remember we had this one guy who like slaughtered 5 people. Like he should have not been like an acceptable, okay person to be around. Entirely comfortable with. Like he used to play cards with us, and it's so weird to be around people and get used to being around people who had done these things, because it makes you realize someone is not just the best or the worst thing they've done. Like I knew some really good guys who'd done some terrible things, and I knew some really absolutely heinous people who had not gotten caught for anything serious. So it was this weird balance of just accepting people as they are on a daily basis and not trying to like kind of pass judgment on somebody, because I really don't know, and I don't know where they came from. But yeah, Stanton would be weird. My favorite color is like a dark blue or like a purple like this. The first week of prison. So I was in the jail for like 10 months, and then I was a receiving prison for 3 months, and then I was at a real prison for 4 years. So each step was a shock. Like getting to the jail was a shock, and they had me in like isolation for 2 days, and then they put me in like a classification block, and that was a shock. Then I went to population, and that was a shock. Each new place, it just took some getting used to, but thankfully I was not in a place that was so out of control or so ridiculous, except honestly the hardest one to adjust to was going down to the dormitory after 18 some years. Like that was harder to adjust to than it was to adjust to any of the other places, because it was life. I guess that makes sense. Did I win the fights I fought? Not all of them, that's for sure. Am I familiar with AZ Meets the World? Yeah, I have. I haven't seen him in a while though. He actually was there for a long time. He used to show up on my feed all the time. I really liked his stuff. How do you know what people's charges are? So there are a number of ways. Sometimes people saw this person on TV or in the newspaper before they came in, and like they were marked from the beginning. Like this dude did something really heinous. Like we're gonna remember him. Sometimes people would get suspicious and look him up, so they'd call home and be like, "Hey, mom or sister or brother or homeboy or whatever, like look up this dude." And either they would look on the sex offender registry to see if they're a registered sex offender, or they would look in local news in whatever area they found out that person was from to find out what the news had covered. And very rarely could you not find something. Like every now and then it'd be difficult to find, but generally they could just look somebody up and then they would send the paperwork in, and DOC stopped letting that paperwork come in. Like you used to be able to just have the official thing, and then people could be shown. They stopped letting that come in because so many people were getting extorted, they were having issues. But it just came to the point where it was just kind of by word of mouth, or every now and then staff would let people know, like staff would let the word slip or whatever, or guys had contraband cell phones, so you could just look it up on there and then pass the word. Yeah. You say he paid for the trailer, and then the trailer park said he couldn't live there. Are you serious? Man, AZ Meets the World, he was this guy who got out of prison, and like, man, really had nothing, was like working at Wendy's, was like just struggling, but really was doing well. Like I was really, like he was getting stuff off his Amazon wish list and like giving it to other people, making sure, it was just really a good dude. I didn't know that. I'm going to have to check about that.
I don't like that. That's not...
No, it's not okay at all. How do I feel about people getting paid so low in prison, or paid so little? All right, I don't think that we necessarily need to build another economy out of like paying people large wages in prison, but I do think that we need to be realistic about the cost, because prisoners run the prisons. Like we did the maintenance, we did the cooking, we did the cleaning, we did everything to operate the prison other than the security role. So I think that we need to be realistic about what the consequences of that are. And either invest in saying, okay, we're going to provide these services, or hey, we're going to reward people with good time for good behavior, or we're going to do something, because I think work is important. I think some of the work they have people do, like especially in like Texas and Mississippi, where they're like working in the fields and like what literally looks like slave labor, I think that's horrendous. But I think that work can be an important part of building self-worth and building good habits and doing positive things. So I think that we need to find a balance that empowers people and gives them skills and encourages them to be better people, but at the same time doesn't say, okay, well, we're not going to give you enough to buy your razors and your coffee and your soups for this month. So, what's the worst thing I experienced in prison? I mean, that's hard to say. Like, I saw some life-changing things. I lost my dad while I was in there, and then thankfully it was like balanced by the humanity of this woman, getting me out of the hole for syrup and like getting me into population and making sure I was okay, and a group of guys that like were just open and brought me food and wanted to make sure I was okay because they kept on my property over the weekend. It was, the halfway point of my sentence where I felt broken. Like, I felt like I was depleted and I didn't know how I would do it again. Or it was, there was another point where I just reached an absolute bottom. Like, I was in this crazy relationship, this crazy situation, and I just didn't want to get up anymore. So I think they were more kind of internal lows or internal kind of like moments than they were like external ones. Because some of the things that I saw or some of the things I experienced definitely have scars, but those were the moments where I felt like giving up, and it wasn't the external things that made me feel like giving up. I'm not a huge sports fan. I really like UFC. Like, I tried to watch the card yesterday there. I had trouble with the streaming. I really like Charles Oliveira, but unfortunately he got beat yesterday, so maybe not the ideal. I don't know. I really never got into organized sports, and then going to prison really kind of killed organized sports for me because, the noise and the craziness and the drama, it was kind of too much for me. But how did I keep myself entertained? I don't know, honey. Do you think I'm good at entertaining myself?
He's very restless. I don't know how he tolerated being in a cell. Like, it's really hard to imagine you locked in a cell. Like, he does not sit and watch TV. You haven't been sitting and reading. Like,
well, it's because I sat and watched TV and I sat and read for 19 years. Like, read 2 or 3 books a week. I watched TV, but usually I tried to have something that was a challenge. So I would get like nonfiction books and I would study up on a subject, or I would kind of dive into a process, or I would learn to draw, or I would learn to build, something with sticks, or I would just like learn something new because that kept me engaged, because just passively like watching the world was always tough for me. And that's one of the reasons I have a hard time watching TV now, or like we're going to go to a movie later and I'm kind of dreading getting through the movie because usually like 15 minutes in, I'm like, all right, can we go do something? Part of it was that I did that, and I found cell partners I was like comfortable with, and I would do stuff. Like, I would work out in the middle of the day. I would do training all day. Like, I'd be sitting there doing like Wing Chun forms. People like, yo, what is wrong with you? I'd be like, yeah, I'm kind of weird. Did I have a shank or a weapon? So they are fairly common in prison. I made a conscious choice to not like carry a weapon because I didn't want to be in a position that I felt that I needed to use one, and I didn't want to feel comfortable putting myself in positions where I felt like I needed to use one. They were around for sure, but it was something that I wanted to steer away from because I didn't want to become like that person. I recognized that I could allow prison to shape me, or I recognized that I could kind of shape myself and try to shape the prison around me, or at least shape the small group of people around me. And I really tried to focus on the latter rather than allowing that place to define who I was going to be. If you want to know what your pumpkin design is,
it's a work of art.
It's an abstract work of art.
You're gonna see the final result, and I don't think anyone's gonna have seen a pumpkin quite like this.
What's the best way to defend yourself in prison? The best way, first of all, is to avoid whatever you can avoid. And that's not necessarily everything. Like, sometimes things come along, you really don't have a choice, or literally are put in that situation. I think it's to understand the situation. Like, if you have like a one-on-one respect fight and you can probably beat this person, the best thing to do is just make a show of it and just like do it in front of everybody and kind of like make an example. On the other hand, if like you're in a serious situation or you think that other people get involved, you go in the cell with them, you lock the door, and then you handle what you do. And even if you get beat badly, at least you don't have other people running in and stomping on you. Like, it just really depends on the situation. There's no easy answer. But again, the best or the first line should always be to avoid the conflict if you can, and even walk away. People are like, man, you can't let somebody say something to you. So you can draw that line and be like, yo, you can't speak to me that way. But you don't always have to throw a punch rather than using your words. And when I first went in, I didn't know that. Like, every time somebody did something disrespectful, or I thought, like, I immediately jumped on it because I thought that's what I had to do. And I was really grateful to learn over the years, the words are far more powerful. And that even coming at somebody with understanding, like, not necessarily in that moment, when somebody's angry, coming back later and being like, look, what you did wasn't okay. Here's what I think was happening. Like, let's get through this. Like, let's talk about how we're going to coexist in this pod, or how we're going to coexist in this situation. And for the most part, people didn't really want violence. Like, people were emotional or irrational or kind of driven in a moment, but people just wanted to get along. We just wanted to live our lives. So, did I have access to music? So, when I first got to Nottoway Correctional Center, I was so excited to order a cassette player, and I ordered Johnny Cash and Alanis Morissette and Deftones and some, like, cassettes. And this was 2004. And I was like, man, this is kind of old school. And then that year they actually switched and started selling CD players, and you could order through like special vendors. It was one was Gem, which was a local vendor. One was like U.S. Music or something in New York. But yeah, you could order tapes and then CDs. And then in 2015 they started selling JPay tablets, like the JP4, JP5, JP6, which are essentially like decommissioned phones. You can listen to MP3s, or you can, write your emails and then sync to the player and send those emails. So those were really cool because you could buy individual songs, and they were like $2 a piece. But you still could like amass a collection, because when you had CDs or tapes, you could only have a certain number, and then you had to trade them in to send them home. And I would always like buy turn-ins and do whatever, but I never probably had more than 40 CDs, whereas I had an ungodly number of songs on my player, and other people did too, so you could just swap players and like listen to a whole different variety of music. Which I thought was really cool. Start a new job in a prison officer tomorrow. You live in Scotland. Man, I think prison culture changes or varies widely from state to state, and especially country to country. So I don't know what the platform is in Scotland. I don't know what the program is. But what I would say is the same thing is, the basics of like firm, fair, and consistent. But again, recognizing you're going to be the point of contact between this person and the world. And what you can do is, you can show people healthy behavior. You can show people how you think they should live. You can model what it is that people want to see, because a lot of people didn't grow up seeing that. A lot of people didn't grow up seeing healthy behavior or healthy communication or healthy anything. And a lot of the people working in the prison don't have that either. So what you have is like essentially emotionally immature people on both sides kind of bickering back and forth rather than modeling healthy behavior. And that's why I think the more we pay and the more we educate correctional officers, at least in Virginia, because we have one of the lowest national standards, the better the performance and experience is going to be. Slowpoke Rodriguez? Is that Pepe? I don't know if that's you. If that's Pepe, what's up, man? We used to play soccer together. Have I ever thought of being a motivational speaker? So I'm going to speak at a corporate event in San Francisco next week. I'm going to speak at Boston University the week after that. I've gotten some invitations to law schools and different colleges. Honey, if you put Vaseline around the opening of the pumpkin, it will stay moist for longer. I'm not sure if that's like innuendo or if that's just like a pumpkin.
I think when I turn this thing around,
Honey, it's amazing. It's amazing. Y'all say it's amazing. Like, please.
I think in the dark, it's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
That's what this is all about. You can see the ink where I drew the design on there, which I should have thought about.
I love this. But we wanted to do something like wholesome, because we're both so busy, and we're both running around and having meetings, and it's nice to just have a weekend. And of course, like, I'm just sitting here talking rather than helping. So she's doing all the work, but that's... I feel like we're really good at splitting things up, right? Oh, well, okay. So you have 9 weeks at college before you go in. That's really good to go. That's good to hear, because that sounds like they actually invest in training people. But okay, so are we good at splitting chores?
Yes.
Yeah. You do not look convinced.
No, I think we are. He does more, you do at least your share, if not more.
Well, thank you. I wasn't even expecting that, but... will you have the honor to guide us through Paris? Okay, I would love... so I was told originally I'm not allowed to leave the country until 2024. I recently got an offer for a speaking engagement in Toronto, so I reached out to my PO and I was like, look, I know you said I can't go outside the country, but is there any way? And she was like, well, look, like, let me see, like, Canada's got to approve you because you're not allowed to go there unless you get, like, a certificate of rehabilitation and whatever. But she was like, I'll call up the chain. Like, I'll do what I can to get you. So I don't think I'll be able to go until 2024. But if I can, you kidding me? I absolutely want to go overseas. Like, I want to go to France. I want to see Paris. Like, we can go to the most romantic city in the world. The only thing we have to do is figure out how we're going to pay for that. What in the world is that? Thank you so much, whatever that was. Yeah, that would be the goal. Thank you so much. Yeah, all the platforms are so weird. They're just... It's weird to do this in so many places, but it's about connecting with people. And, some of the relationships, like the video call I have every week with my buddy Fatty, I met him on TikTok. Like, that's how we became friends. When we went to California, we went and stayed with somebody in Santa Barbara that I'd only known from Instagram. Like, we had just, he had sent us some concert tickets, and then we went out there. He was like, man, look, I'd love to host you at the house. So we did. We went out there, had an amazing time. Just got a text from him this morning. Like, he said he's coming out east. He's bringing his dune buggy. Like, it's just so cool. Yeah, I remember you reached out before. You said you were a French police officer, and we would love to see Paris. And I would love to see the difference in how things are applied and, the way you deal with policing in France. And I'm sure their strengths and weaknesses are good things, but I always appreciate that.
It's time for the pumpkin reveal.
Uh-oh.
Only compliments.
Everybody say nice things. It looks awesome, honey. It looks amazing, right? Right? Right?
All right, we'll leave the pumpkin
Yes.
so that others can see.
But then we have to see if we're gonna like super glue this back on, because otherwise, how do you get it off? Or do you have to like?
You have to reach in the eye. And
This feels like really, that feels really nasty. See, everybody says it's beautiful. Thank you so much.
It's really.
Somebody said it looks like it has a chromosome missing.
It does.
Oh, that made me really happy. How much did we pay for the pumpkin?
$10.
It was $10.
We could have probably gotten one for cheaper at like the grocery store. They sometimes have them for like $6, but we got it at a cute little family-owned pumpkin patch. So support local.
Yeah, so there's a little orchard out by us that has, apples, they have pumpkins, but they also have like fresh beef and like fresh milk and fresh. It's like 5 times as much as everywhere else, so I don't think we could do that often. But it felt good to support a local business. It felt good to get we got some fresh cheese from there that was
so
absolutely
good.
amazing.
Made from local cows.
Yeah. And I got a brownie ice cream sandwich that was possibly the best thing I've ever had in my life. So that was really cool. Really glad. Do you want to get some super glue, or do you want to try to like sew it together, or how are we doing this?
You know what we could probably do? We could probably nail it like up through, or put a screw.
We're gonna put a screw through a pumpkin because that's what we do. I live outside of Charlottesville, Virginia. So we tried to live inside of Charlottesville, Virginia, and unfortunately everything is way too expensive. So now we live way outside of Charlottesville. So we have a long drive getting in, and that's one of the reasons I try to work from home. But
it's pretty, yeah.
It's beautiful. Like we have like changing leaves and. I was thinking about that yesterday. I went out for a ride and like had all kinds of problems, but I was just like, man, we live in a beautiful place.
We do.
We got really lucky.
And the foliage this time of year is incredible in Virginia.
Yeah.
Probably, I don't know if we can like compete with Vermont, but it's pretty close.
Well, I mean, people come to Virginia just to see the changing leaves, and I gotta admit, it's pretty amazing. But yeah, we moved in together. Was it April, March? We bought a house. Now that feels real. Like, you want to talk about some weird feelings? Like, wait, I'm not in prison and I'm living with a woman and we have a house? Asheville, though, is absolutely amazing. So I've never been to East Tennessee, but we did go down to outside Asheville to Waynesville where my uncle lived. Went down there earlier this year to ride motorcycles, and we definitely want to go back. I've been asked to go speak at a military base in South Carolina, and I want to go see my buddy in Greenville, and I would love to go through North Carolina, but I think that's going to be in February, so there's going to be no motorcycle riding, but maybe we could go hike or go in the mountains if it's not snowing too bad. Hola de España. Mucho gusto. So I had a friend in prison, my best friend, actually the one we just went to see in California, the one who flew in to see me. She speaks Castilian Spanish, and I speak Mexican Spanish, and so we always argue about who speaks right. Be like, ¿por qué estás hablando tan mal? Never mind. But I'm always interested because I did an interview for Bruta España. And I was like, I have the most Central American Spanish, and I'm speaking to this really fancy outlet, and I feel really overwhelmed and really intimidated. And I hadn't really been keeping up with my Spanish, so it was an experience. But I love this. From London, from Charlotte. Yeah, Waynesville is really beautiful. We need to get out and see more of the world. Where do we go?
Well, I mean, you're going back to California, then we're going up to Boston.
Yeah.
Maybe out to Austin. I mean, it depends.
Oh yeah, that would be really cool.
I think anywhere in the country would be great to see, and then as soon as you can get out of the country, we'll do that.
Yeah, so one of our dreams, we always said, oh yeah, we're going to Boston, not this week coming, but the following week, we'll be up there. We wanted to go to Ireland to see my buddy Fatty, and we wanted to go to Iceland. Well, cool. And we wanted to go to Scotland, because Scotland's supposed to be beautiful, but Ireland won't let me in as a felon. You have to get all kinds of special, permissions and visas and whatever, and, maybe it's possible, but what I read basically said, if you're a felon and you're on probation or you're within 5 years of getting off probation, they're not letting you in, so I hope so.
I think if you can get a speaking engagement,
I'm hoping so. I didn't ride the Tail of the Dragon. We read the Rattler, and just because the Tail of the Dragon is so busy that we would have had to go on the weekend, and it's hard to ride a motorcycle fast in an area where you have 100 motorcycles and 100 cars, and people are being crazy. So we want to go. I've got a group of military riders that I go with, and we're talking about doing a trip down there in the spring. We want to do a track day, and we want to go a trip down there to do the Dragon on a Monday or a Tuesday when nobody's around. And we definitely want to go to Scotland, and we would stop by England. We would go everywhere. We would love to see the world. Thing that's been most gratifying to me is meeting people all over, like every city we've gone to, like either in Virginia or the traveling we've done, I've been able to meet people. Like the last time I was in the airport, the guy at the restaurant was like, hey, are you on Instagram or TikTok? And I was like, yeah, we had a great conversation. And then the guy next to me was a DJ who's like, man, I'm 40 some years old, like I'm tired of being on the road, I want to settle down, like can you recommend, just amazing conversations. And to me, meeting people is really the experience. The age gap is 13 years, though right now, because she had a birthday and I haven't had mine yet, it appears to be 14 years, but yeah. Yeah, so I'm speaking in San Francisco. I don't know how I'm supposed to talk about it because I'm specifically not allowed to reveal the location of the speech, which means I don't even know if I guess I think I've already talked about it. I'm not sure if I can talk about who I'm talking to. But I'm going to be speaking Thursday afternoon, and then, so Wednesday night I'm going to get there, just try to kind of like hang out and recoup. Thursday afternoon I'm speaking, and then Thursday night I'm free, and then Friday I think I'm going up to see Muir Woods. Somebody from Instagram and TikTok was like, hey, I'd love to tour you around, which I think is really cool. So yeah, somebody said it's missing a chromosome. You should have seen the cat earlier. The cat was super into it. Somebody said something about Comrade. Yeah, so Comrade Sync, I was so disappointed. We had the TikTok, like prison TikTok get-together thing in Pennsylvania, and he was trying to come, but he had a photo shoot like the day before, and it didn't work out that he could come. We had a couple other people who wanted to come that couldn't, but we're trying to get everybody together and figure out a way to like continue with the community thing. But yeah. So what would I change about the U.S. prison system? Again, I would empower psychologists and social workers and occupational therapists to see the best way to facilitate change, to create a sense of safety so that people have a foundation to grow from, and then learn new habits, deal with trauma, and move forward. So I'm a big fan of like DBT. I'm a big fan of trauma-informed care, though that label itself can be kind of confusing. I'm a really big fan of internal family systems. And then job training and giving people the opportunity to explore the things that they like and the things that they want to do, and giving people the opportunity to essentially figure out who they are. Because that was one of the things that I was able to do is I was able to get a job in all these different places. And I was able to say, hey, I like doing electrical work. Like this is something I could see myself doing. I like being in the law library, but I don't want to be a paralegal. Like I don't want to go to law school. Like I enjoy helping people, but I don't enjoy doing research or like going into precedent. So it allowed me to figure out who I was. And again, that's one of the reasons I say that work can be so important. But I think a lot of times it's not necessarily the way it's done. You're from Watertown, South Dakota. I always wonder about South Dakota. I feel like I would really love to go see South and North Dakota as long as it's not like any other 10 months of winter. But yeah. Is your engagement to San Francisco open to the public? No, it's not. It's a corporate event, so I don't think I can invite people. But I will be in the city Thursday night and then I guess Friday night. I fly out fairly early on Saturday, so yeah. Oh, honey, look how you did it.
I screwed the pumpkin back together.
She used an actual screw to fix the pumpkin. That is what I call innovation. Do I think if I didn't go to jail, I would be fat? That's a weird question. I don't know. My current job, so I'm the executive director of a nonprofit that provides prison reentry services in Charlottesville. We've got some reentry classes. We're in our kind of like pilot program, the first 13-week program. We've already got enough people signed up to start a second one. I'm trying to get some kind of like help driven to the local halfway house that's trying to open, because we don't currently have a single halfway house in Charlottesville, Virginia. We have one outside of the city for women, and we need that help. So even though it's not directly, like I'm trying to use my organization to drive resources and attention towards them, our eventual goal would be to have like a halfway house or a reentry center, actually provide trauma-informed care, and basically the things that I'm saying we should provide in prison, provide those to people on the outside, and partner with groups and organizations that want to do vocational skills and want to do work skills and want to actually empower people so they can kind of stand on their own 2 feet, they can make their own living, and they can do well. So, do you think freedom feels normal to me yet?
I think yes, with flashes of no.
Yeah, that's the way I would say it. Like most days I feel okay, but there are definitely days that I'm just like, I'm either shocked in a good way by like I just walk outside and I see the changing leaves and I'm just like, and then other times I'm just horribly overwhelmed in a really simple situation. So I don't know. Well, you've managed to carve a pumpkin and screw a bow. Hey, you got it. No, you can't just like force it on it. Here, I got it. You're gonna have to really. Well, we've undone the pumpkin.
Pumpkin.
My favorite food in prison. You can't just force it on there. It's not gonna.
It's cosmetic.
Okay, I'm not gonna touch it. I'm gonna let it be. But, I don't know. My favorite food in prison was when we got chicken. Like, at first it was like once a month, or no, first it was once a week, then it was once a month, and then for the last like 15 years it's been like not on the menu, so good luck. But when we had it, it was really amazing. Are we going to have a big wedding?
Depends who's paying for it.
Yeah, well, apparently we're too broke to have a big wedding, but...
Also, big weddings take so much planning. Like, that becomes something you have to spend so much time on. So I think we'll live stream it.
We'll live stream it with just
From
the two of us.
From the courthouse steps.
From a crappy hotel room. We're going to hire some homeless guy to marry us.
From a budget inn.
Yeah, from a budget inn to celebrate that first day together. I think that's... We could probably rent out the whole budget inn. We could just have the whole wedding party in there, get a deal, do some promo stuff, like...
That would be awful.
It would be really bad. But you know what? Sometimes you just got to embrace the bad. So the only thing I really miss, from prison is the time to read and meditate and work out consistently, and the camaraderie of like people under pressure. There's been a certain amount of that's been very, very big. Thank you for helping your student with their research project a few months ago. Well, you're welcome. I don't remember which person that was because I get so many emails and I talk to so many people who are doing papers or doing presentations or doing class projects. Like this one person, this is my favorite. This high school girl contacted me. She was like, "I'm doing a class presentation. I need you to make a video." And I was like, "Okay, like on what?" She was like, "I need you to do this and this and this, and I need it by like 3 days from now." And I was like, part of me wants to be like, go screw yourself. But I was like, you know what? If like it gives me a chance to talk to a group of people that are coming in, and that's why I've enjoyed being able to talk at schools and law schools and universities. So I was like, all right, cool. Like this isn't about her, but it gives me a chance to talk to kids about what's actually going on in the criminal justice system and hopefully change some minds or at least offer some different perspective. So, yeah, I miss community. So if anybody's read the younger book, Tribe, I think it's kind of oversimplified, but he talks about how like people at war feel a sense of community and tribe that they don't feel anywhere else, and that our society has essentially taken away the bonds that keep us together. And I think that's a problem. I think that we need that sense of community, and that if we can't find it, we're going to be like isolated people floating in a cesspool.
But that seems like such a double-edged sword, because when you have, you need the sense of community and you need the tribe, but then it tends to create in groups and out, sort of others, us and them, and so how do you create something that does the benefit of the sense of community without the outsidering and othering of people who aren't part of your tribe?
That's a really good question. I think the goal is to have, because everybody has like an us and a them, and the goal is to expand the us to where it includes everybody, so that there's no longer anybody in the them. And I think that's really hard to do, because it's really easy to say, like, oh, my family against the world, or, like, my neighborhood against the world, or it's hard to really expand that.
And I don't know where I read this, but somewhere I read that you have the capacity to have, like, some level of relationship with, like, I'm making this number up, but, like, 150 people.
I remember
or something.
That.
And so it's not realistic biologically to say you can be in community with every human on the planet. I mean, you can be compassionate, but, like, you have your core sort of intimate relationships that you have time, to cultivate every day or every week. And then you have your sort of broader, like, but still tight community, maybe people you see once a week or have something in common with. I don't know.
That is tough. Maybe we just need a bunch of, like, pods around the country. We're just going to use the prison model. We're going to build community in these self-sustaining communities that have big walls and...
Well, I do think looser, like neighborhoods, really well-designed neighborhoods create a sense... And nobody hates somebody because they're, like, you don't live next door to me. You just don't know them as well, right? I mean, so if it's building sort of sustainable communities where you have enough contact with the people you live near that you have a sense of belonging.
I like that. Because, like, we live in this neighborhood, and we really like our neighbors, really on both sides, but we don't really know anybody. We haven't, like, met people. It doesn't feel like a community. Like, we're waiting to see, like, if people come around for trick-or-treating, then, like, cool, like, then there'll be some, like, interaction, and there'll be what feels like community, but for the most part, like, we don't really feel together with everybody.
Right, and it goes, like, I think regular contact, shared purpose, and that's why, or shared experience, like school, prison, obviously is not school, but it's the same kind of thing as being thrust into a class. You're gonna be with these people. You didn't choose them, and now you have to get along with them, and you're gonna get to know them. And out of that group that you're forced to be with, really tight relationships emerge.
I agree. And people say the same thing about the military. People have talked about that similarity. What is my opinion on incentivized prisons? I'm assuming you're talking about like prisons that have like require a certain amount of bed space. I think any incentive to maintain people's incarceration or not move towards decarceration is tremendously problematic. What made you first fall for me? When you didn't know me except by a prison photo.
It was a frog in boiling water situation. I from the very beginning, I thought he was smart and interesting from the brief interaction we had. So I had like a initial good impression, but you were in prison. We were never going to meet. I was probably never going to like talk to you again unless we did a follow-up story. But then it was just the constant, like very slow conversation after conversation after conversation that sort of so gradually. I mean, like it'll be 4 years. We're at 3.5 years since I did the story. And for 2 of those years, we were just like talking somewhat regularly, but about like news stories. So I fell in love after a long period of time, you know.
Because she had built this wall where she didn't let anybody in. Like she was not going to be, close to anybody. She wasn't going to have a relationship. Like
romantically. I mean, I had lots of close friends.
True, yeah. She wasn't like a psycho living in the woods. I'm sorry.
I was not antisocial. I compartmentalized and I really spent time with my family, my kids, and my friends. And then if I dated, it was like totally separate from the rest of my life.
Yeah. So I had to like sneak in the friend category or in the like source category.
I did not see him coming.
Yeah, exactly. There's, what is it? John Mayer has like a heart assassin story or whatever. You're like a love assassin. I tricked you and I got in the back door and... But at the same time, she did the same thing for me, mostly because she was like... She was so bizarrely out of my league that it was like, I never even thought it was possible. I was like, yeah, this is a woman I'm watching on TV at night. Like, this is a woman who's like won all these awards for these stories she's done and like, she's responsible for like... Yeah, so I was like, all right, so, like, she's out of my league, but I really like her. Like, maybe I can, like, go talk to her when I get out. I don't know. It didn't pass my mind. And then when she told me she loved me, I was like, damn, like, I'm not crazy. Like, because I really thought I was crazy thinking that she was, like, feeling for me what I was feeling for her. And I just got really lucky. That's what it comes down to. I have no idea how, but in every area of my life, I have gotten so incredibly lucky, and I'm just grateful for it. What did I do? It's the third pinned video on my page. I committed a robbery and shot someone non-fatally. Shot 2 people, actually, back in 2002. I should write a book about my experience. Yes, I will write a book. So I had a book proposal that I put together, and I submitted it a couple places, but I haven't really pursued it. I just don't have that much time. I actually reached out to a couple agents recently to say, hey, I need representation because I'm getting invitations to speak, and I'm getting invitations about, like, I need somebody to help me with that because I don't know what to do, and I don't want to, like, do a bad job or just, like, self-publish if I could get somebody else to publish, or I don't know what I'm doing. But I have a couple chapters written. I have a proposal. Like, we're working on that. Yeah, we do feel like we're pretty blessed. There's if you go on my profile page and go to the link tree, there's a P.O. box you can use. Thank you. Like, I get some really good stuff. I get some weird stuff. I get some, like, self-help manuals. I've gotten some artwork, which was really amazing. People have reached out. I've gotten some really nice cards. Like, one guy had surgery and was basically bedbound and didn't have anything to do, and he reached out and he said, look, I just wanted to reach out to the people that have had a positive impact on me, and your channel has really done a lot. And that was touching, that somebody, like, took the time out of their life to say that I had done something positive, because I don't always know that. Like, I think I'm pretty insecure sometimes. I feel like, man, I'm making all these videos. Like, is it actually making a difference, or am I doing anything? To have somebody take their time and write that really felt good. But it's like for her. Like, sometimes I feel like I'm not showing up for her, or doing enough for her. And sometimes I'm not. Sometimes there are things I really need to better. And she's so good at communicating, like, gratitude, or just pulling me aside and looking at me and be like, you know how much I love you? And that's so sweet to have, because it's validating for everything that I'm doing, and I really appreciate it. So, how do I feel like shows about Dahmer and true crime podcast? Yeah, damn true crime podcasters.
It's sick people.
So if you don't know, she has a true crime podcast called Small Town Big Crime that is like going to appear in this like national special and to be on CBS This Morning and like all this crazy stuff. It's not my thing, just because I've kind of lived it and I don't really want any more of that. But I understand the interest. I understand that the draw. Sensationalizing things like Dahmer or like prison movies, I think, can be really problematic, but I understand it's inevitable. I mean, TV writers don't tell the boring parts of anything, and they don't usually tell the true parts of anything. So I think making a story that's sensationalized and dramatic and interesting, I get it. It's just, it's not for me, because it's a little too close to home for me. Yeah. They love your podcast.
Aw, thank you.
Yeah.
We're hoping to be doing some new stuff, and we're thinking about what a season 2 might look like. But yeah, still in the works.
And they have a YouTube channel you can find, Small Town Big Crime,
We did.
and they have.
It's still a work in progress, that thing, but we're getting there.
I agree. So a pardon in the state of Virginia, if you want to file for pardon or clemency, their paperwork is on the Secretary of the Commonwealth's website. So back when I did it, you had to do it by hand. Like there was no online version, there was no possibility. Now I think it can be done online if you have somebody outside who wants to help. What they essentially ask for is all the paperwork related to your case, like all your charges, all your behavioral stuff, like everything related to your situation. And then whether you're taking accountability for what you did, which I did. I said, this is what I did. This is, how it happened. These are the things I'm doing to change. Then I talked about the things I'd done while I was in. Like, these are the things that I did while I was in to better myself, to better the people around me, and to try to make amends, either direct or indirect, for the harm that I caused. And then I gave a proposal of what I wanted to do in the future. This is how I want to help people. This is what I want to do when I get out into the world. And when I did that, it essentially resonated with what they were looking for. They were looking for someone who was reformed, who had taken accountability for their actions, who had been working for years to educate themselves, to help people around them, to like grow a sense of community, and then who had a plan for the future. That wasn't just like, yeah, I want to get out and whatever, but actually had a plan that they could verify and say, hey, this makes sense. It seems like it's a good idea. Thank you. Yeah, she definitely does look at me that way, right? She's pretty amazing. Mwah. I get really lucky, and we struggle like everybody else. Like we have problems in our relationship, but I think the biggest thing is that we talk about them.
I don't think they're really like they're like I don't think we have like an ongoing deep-rooted problem in our relationship. I think we have conflict and we have things like issues that we have to work on. Maybe that's just a semantic difference.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, though. But there are issues that come up repeatedly. Like, we were in couples therapy. We had a terrible experience with online therapy. We had one kind of half-decent therapist, one really terrible therapist. But I think it's important to have that communication, and have a place where you can talk about all these uncomfortable things. I don't know. Somebody said I just got cooties. Yeah, she does have cooties. But if that's how I catch them, I've already got them from a long time ago. Do I have any guilt now for my crimes? I really struggled with guilt for a long time because I questioned whether I ever could find redemption or whether I could ever be forgiven or ever kind of like earn my place in the world. And I think that's a really valid question. So what I came across was the realization that I was going to continue to feel guilty until I'd use that guilt to kind of drive me to make changes in my life. And when I finally woke up and I recognized that I was fundamentally not the person that I was when I committed those crimes, when I was fundamentally someone other than I had been, I could let go of that guilt because it had done its job. It had driven me to make the changes I needed to make in my life. And that holding onto it at any point after that would essentially just tear me down rather than drive me forward. So that was the point at which I felt like I could let go of that guilt. And that was for a lot of things. I mean, there's still, like, if I, say something mean, or if I do, like, there are things that I could feel guilty about in my life, but for the most part, when I've made the changes and I'm doing the daily work, I don't feel guilt the same way that I used to, because I used to know I was doing something wrong, but I didn't want to do anything to fix it, or I didn't want to change who I was. So I think that was the changing relationship with guilt for me.
All right, I just heard from someone who is watching our live stream, so hi, Samantha.
Hi, Samantha. Isn't it so weird? Like I posted a video this morning. No, go ahead.
She's the afternoon producer for my radio show, Charlottesville Right Now, on WINA.
Oh, wow. But so I posted a video this morning. Like, I slept on the floor last night. Like, I just, sleeping in the bed, I don't sleep well. Like, I get up, my back hurts. So I just laid a sheet on the floor. I laid down. I slept better than I have. Like, my sleep numbers were better, like, on my watch. And we were talking about this. We were like, what do we do? So, like, 2 minutes after I post this video, I'm getting texts from friends. I'm getting Instagram messages. I'm getting TikTok messages. I'm like, man, this is kind of neat. Like, all I have to do is ask a question. People are giving me, like, on sale, like, sleep number beds, and we're at a contact, and the guy who hustles mattresses out of the back of, like, whatever. Like, it's bizarre. Yeah. Well, all right. Well, I don't want to say we. She has carved a pumpkin. I have sat here and run on effortlessly for way too long. Yeah, so I think we should go do couples thing, and then we have to go to a movie later. And this is I think it's a beautiful pumpkin.
And he says, thank you for watching.
Bye. Thank y'all so much.